What difference does it make that your mother is a commander, a captain who ignored her connections, unaware that she would soon receive a call directly from the presidential administration? Her mother was the commander of the main directorate of personnel. Don't make me laugh. You're not even worthy of being a soldier next year. Having become a sergeant to escape her mother's influence, she found herself on the verge of losing everything due to cruel bullying at the hands of a female instructor. But when her mother, a major general, actually arrived by helicopter and landed on the unit's territory, the entire army was thrown into disarray. The heart of the Russian Federation's defense. The Ministry of Defense building in Moscow. In its very center, in an office where a cool and strict atmosphere reigns, is the office of the commander of the main directorate of personnel of the ground forces. Under a wall adorned with a huge Russian flag and the banner of the ground forces, at her desk sat a figure who had become a living legend, Major General Svetlana Orlova. The first woman to command the main directorate of personnel in the history of the Russian army. The 2 stars on her shoulder straps embodied the weight and responsibility she'd earned at the cost of a lifetime. Her gaze was fixed on her 20-year-old daughter, Anna Petrova, who sat across from her with a perfectly straight back. Anna had inherited her mother's strong gaze and determined chin, but the light in her eyes was different. If Svetlana Orlova's gaze was like a laser piercing the battlefield, then Anna's was the light of unpolished steel. I'll ask again, Anna Petrova, why a sergeant and not an officer? Orlova's voice was low and calm, but it held a sharp question. I completely misunderstand my daughter's choice. You could have followed in my footsteps and entered a military academy. If you don't like that path, you could have become a scientist like your father or done anything else. So why are you choosing the most difficult path in the army, becoming a sergeant? Quote, Anna smiled faintly. Mom, you've become the head of the army, and I want to be its arms, legs, and backbone. I want to be a real soldier, breathing the same air as the privates at the very bottom. To stand on my own 2 feet, not in the shadow of your glory. These words struck Orlova right in the heart. The shadow of her mother's glory. She already knew that her entire life, dedicated to serving the motherland, had become a shackle and a giant shadow for her beloved daughter, one she wanted to escape. You're simply running away from a label, the commander's daughter. This isn't an escape, but evidence. Anna took a yellow envelope from her folder and placed it on the table. Notification of enrollment in the Ryazan Sergeant Training Center. I want to be judged only by my name, Anna Petrova, in a place where no one knows me. I want to earn my first shoulder straps on my own, the shoulder straps of a sergeant. So please, allow me. Make my personal information a level 2 state secret so that no one except the head of the school knows who I am. This is my first and last request in life. Svetlana gazed long into her daughter's unwavering eyes. This stubbornness, this firmness. She had to admit that her daughter was most like herself. She nodded silently. It wasn't defeat, but the stern approval of a commander sending another version of himself onto the battlefield. A few days later, Anna Petrova, along with dozens of other young women, candidates, walked through the main gates of the training center. This was the cradle where the elite sergeants, the backbone of the Russian army, were trained. The faces of the candidates, bidding farewell to their families, expressed a mixture of tension and determination. Anna was alone, no one was there to see her off, but she didn't feel lonely. Completely freed from the burden of being the commander's daughter, she was overcome with the excitement of being reborn as Cadet Anna Petrova. From this moment on, you are no longer civilians, you are cadets of the ground forces of the Russian Federation. With that piercing cry from the instructor, the hellish training course began. Her hair was cut according to regulations, and she was issued an uncomfortable field uniform and combat boots. The barracks greeted her with a pungent smell of disinfectant and a tense atmosphere. Anna was assigned to Alpha Company, which consisted exclusively of female cadets. The company commander and the terror of the entire training center was Captain Marina Volkova. Captain Volkova was a living legend of the academy, a military academy graduate with honors, and a former deputy group commander in the special forces. She had endured rigorous service in the field before becoming an instructor here. A true elite of the elite. The cadets who underwent her training graduated with top grades, but rumor had it that more than half dropped out during the process or turned into wimps. Among the cadets, she was nicknamed the Ice Witch. The day after enrollment, during the first official parade of Alpha Company, Captain Marina Volkova appeared on the parade ground with an icy expression. She walked slowly in front of the line of 160 female cadets, examining each one's face like a predator choosing its prey. "Welcome, beauty." Her voice was soft, but her words cut like knives. "You should leave your habit of acting like princesses and being capricious in front of guys at home in the comfort of your bed. The army isn't your Instagram, and a uniform isn't designer clothing." Quote. Her gaze fell on Anna, who stood with an especially straight posture and an unwavering gaze. Captain Volkova poked Anna under the chin with the tip of her finger. It was a huge humiliation, but Anna didn't flinch. Usually, those with pretty faces serve the worst. If you're going to whine and disgrace all female soldiers, get lost right now. There are plenty of defenders of the motherland without you. I understand what I said. Yeah, I understand. The frightened, broken voices of the cadets rang out. From that day on, Captain Volkova's cruel bullying focused on Anna Petrova. Her method wasn't simple physical violence. It was the most cruel and sophisticated way a woman can torture another, the destruction of her self-esteem. During tactical training, after the cadets finished crawling through the mud, Volkova said, "Cadet Petrova, just look at your face. Stuck in that mud, you felt like someone special. Don't flatter yourself, you're just a dirty mongrel. Don't think that drops of your sweat will be an indulgence. You haven't proven anything yet." When Anna was acting as a squad leader and one of her comrades made a mistake, Volkova lined up the entire squad and yelled at Anna. "You're a leader, don't you see how the entire squad suffers because of one order of yours? Because of your incompetence, you're inept leadership. It's better to surrender to the enemy than to fight under the command of someone like you. You're a disgrace to all women, do you understand?" She never punished Anna alone, always in front of her comrades, tearing her pride to shreds and applying collective responsibility. Gradually, her comrades began to avoid Anna. The thought of the idea that it was dangerous to be around Anna Petrova spread like an epidemic. Anna found herself in complete isolation. Every night, Anna curled up in the toilet and cried silently. She knew that if she said her mother's name, all this hell would end. One phone call, and Captain Marina Volkova would immediately lose her uniform. But she couldn't do it. If she broke here, she would be branded a mama's girl for the rest of her life. Endure, Anna Petrova. This is what you wanted. Gritting her teeth, she looked at her reflection in the mirror. Time passed, and the final and most rigorous stage of training began. Comprehensive field exercises. 5 days and 4 nights in the forest in conditions simulating a real combat situation with the performance of various tasks, Anna was again appointed squad leader. Captain Volkova did this on Marina. On the 3rd day of the exercises, during a night training session on terrain orientation, one of the squad members, Cadet Irina Sokolova. Anna immediately stopped her drill and rushed to her side. Irina's ankle was severely swollen and twisted at an unnatural angle. According to regulations, a serious situation with a suspected fracture required an immediate radio report and a wait for help, but the radio was working poorly, and delay could worsen Irina's condition. Anna made a decision. I'll carry Irina to the nearest road. The rest of you, return to headquarters immediately, report the situation, and request assistance. This was the squad commander's order. Anna hoisted the frail Irina onto her back and ran through the darkness. It was against regulations, but she couldn't ignore her comrades' suffering. After almost an hour of wandering through forest paths, she finally reached the road, where they were spotted by a passing exercise support vehicle. Irina was safely taken to the medical center. The next morning, after the exercise concluded, Anna was immediately summoned to the company commander's office. Captain Marina Volkova greeted her with a cold smile, crossing her arms. Well, our heroine, Cadet Anna Petrova, has arrived. She quit the exercise without permission, disbanded the squad, practically wrote a novel, and imagined herself to be Joan of Arc. Cadet Sokolova's condition was critical. It was the best decision. The best. Your sentimental play at being a hero was the best decision. The army is no place for your emotional outbursts. What you did last night was direct disobedience of an order and leaving your unit without leave. You're not worthy of being a sergeant, much less a leader. Volkova took a piece of paper from her desk drawer and threw it in front of her. A report on voluntary expulsion. Write it down, by hand, and then pack your things and get out. Stop disgracing the school's honor. At that moment, something inside Anna snapped. Everything she'd been holding back for the past few months exploded. Why should I do this? I saved a comrade. You, Captain, are unworthy of being an instructor. You didn't teach or lead the cadets, you only bullied and trampled on them. Volkova's face turned to stone. She'd never encountered a cadet who dared to contradict her. Anna had nothing left to lose. Maybe you got here through connections? That's why you hate those who don't have connections like me. But my connections, Captain, are a little different from what do you think? Anna stepped forward and, looking Volkova straight in the eyes, said, My mother, the commander of the main directorate of personnel of the ground forces of the Russian Federation, Major General Svetlana Orlova. You've arrived. Volkova looked at Anna for a moment, and then snorted with the most contemptuous expression on her face. I think I'm going crazy. She had completely lost her mind. She stood up and walked over to Anna. Your pretty face must have completely clouded your vision. How dare you hide behind the commander's name? How dare someone like you pronounce her name? With a sharp sound, like the click of a blade, Volkova's palm struck Anna on the cheek. You are not worthy of being a soldier. You are not worthy of being a human being. I will tear your lies and arrogance out by the roots today. Volkova grabbed the intercom and, screaming, called the military police. Pressing her palm to her burning cheek, Anna collapsed in shock and despair. The moment when her last bit of pride, however, turned into the most terrible violence and insult, shattering it into pieces. With a bang, Anna Petrova's world went blindingly white for a moment. Several seconds passed before her brain registered that she had just been struck by a captain of the Russian armed forces, her direct superior. Her heart sank before her cheek. True, her only weapon and last remaining pride had turned into the cruelest blade, branding her a mad criminal who had insulted her superior. The captain's face, which she had once found handsome, was now distorted with rage and contempt. As if justifying her violence, she lashed out at Anna even louder. Are you completely out of your mind? You dare pretend to be the commander's daughter and insult her direct superior? Because of someone like you, our entire Alpha company will be in the dirt. Odessa, she almost snatched the intercom handset away. Duty officer, this is the Alpha company commander speaking. Send 2 military police to my office immediately. One of the cadets is showing signs of insubordination, aggression, and delusions of grandeur. Required. Immediate detention and isolation. End of communication. Anna said nothing more, couldn't. All her energy seemed to dissipate along with the shock of the blow. Resentment, anger, sadness, and bottomless despair. This is how it all ends. This is the price I pay for naming my mother. In the end, I still haven't proven anything. Soon, heavy footsteps were heard from the hallway, and two sergeants wearing military police armbands burst into the office. At a nod from Captain Volkova, they, without asking questions, roughly grabbed Anna by the arms. "Cadet Anna Petrova, you are being detained on charges of insulting a superior and violating military discipline. If you resist, physical force may be used." With this cold warning, Anna was helplessly dragged away. Several comrades she met in the hallway looked at her with frightened eyes, then quickly looked away. There was no sympathy or pity in their eyes, only cold indifference. And a desire to stay away from the madwoman who had caused the problems. The complete alienation of those with whom she had sweated together just yesterday hurt Anna's heart more painfully than the captain's slap. Anna was taken to the Nenagorupvat and then to a small solitary confinement cell on the school grounds, disguised as a psychological release room. This was the order of the school's commander, Major General Igor Denisov, who had received Volkova's report. Major General Denisov sat in his office, looking at the report on his desk, breaking out in a cold sweat. Captain Marina Volkova's emergency report about the inappropriate behavior of Cadet Anna Petrova and the measures taken was a ticking time bomb. Subject: Cadet Anna Petrova. Special notes: exhibits serious signs of delusions of grandeur. Claims to be the daughter of the current commander of the main personnel directorate, Major General Svetlana Orlova, has shown aggression and threatening behavior toward her immediate superior, the company commander, for which she was physically neutralized and isolated. General Denisov was the only person in Russia, besides Orlova herself, who knew Anna's true identity. Several months ago, he received a call from the Ministry of Defense. On the other end of the line was the commander's voice. She wasn't ordering, but rather requesting that her daughter, entering the academy incognito, be treated like an ordinary cadet, without any privileges. Denisov swore allegiance and promised to guarantee Cadet Petrova's safety and secrecy under any circumstances. And now the commander's daughter had been called crazy, slapped, and locked in solitary confinement. If Volkova's report was true, then she had acted to maintain discipline. But if Anna's words were true, then Volkova had beaten the commander's daughter and filed a false report, and he himself became the commander who had condoned this violence and lies. The mere thought of it made him sick. A chill ran down his spine. Damn Volkova, this toxic woman. If she was causing problems, they were of gigantic proportions. He knew Captain Volkova was a capable officer, but her obsession with results was pathological, and she was putting undue pressure on her subordinates. Denisov's thoughts were in disarray. How could he resolve this situation if he immediately launched an investigation against Volkova and released Anna? Rumors would spread that he had eliminated an elite officer to get his hands on the commander's daughter. But he couldn't believe Volkova's report, and he couldn't keep Anna locked up either. He decided to stall for time. Cadet Petrova was to be kept not in the guardhouse, but in the psychological decompression room. Contact with the outside world was to be completely prohibited, and a military doctor was to be sent for a thorough assessment of her psychological state. Captain Volkova was to be ordered to keep her mouth shut until further notice. All cadets of Alpha Company were to be given non-disclosure orders. I would handle this matter personally. Denisov wanted to quietly neutralize the bomb before it exploded. Just as he was racking his brains over how to report everything to Svetlana Orlova, the red phone on his desk with the direct line to the Ministry of Defense rang. Denisov's heart sank. With a trembling hand, he picked up the receiver. Could it really be that General Orlova had already found out? I serve faithfully, head of the Ryazan Training Center, Major General Denisov. Hello, Comrade General. This is the Security Council under the Presidential Administration. The voice on the other end of the line didn't belong to Svetlana Orlova. It was a much colder, almost mechanical tone. Presidential Administration. Denisov held his breath for a moment. We are calling about Cadet Anna Petrova. The scheduled communication session for today to confirm her safety did not take place. From our side, there is currently no confirmation of her location. Some emergency has occurred at the school, a regular communication session to confirm safety. A waterfall of sweat trickled down Denisov's back from the presidential administration. He had completely forgotten that General Orlova wasn't just a high-ranking military officer, but a key figure in national security, enjoying the absolute trust of the current president. The problem with her daughter meant an emergency for the facility under the control of the Security Council. The thing was, Denisov couldn't string two words together. His mind had gone blank. This situation was far beyond what he could handle quietly. This was no longer a training center level issue, but a major security incident directly linked to the Ministry of Defense and the Kremlin. Comrade General, can you hear me? Please report the current condition and location of Cadet Anna Petrova. The officer's voice remained calm, but there was a strong pressure in it that brooked no further excuses. It was at that moment that a deafening roar, shaking the windows, filled the entire academy. Denisov looked out the window and froze in horror. A huge Mi-8 military transport helicopter, the main workhorse of Army aviation, hovered over the main parade ground. It was an unusual training or transport flight. The helicopter was descending for landing. An unauthorized landing attempt by a VIP helicopter. What is this? Contact control immediately, Denisov said before the helicopter made a demonstrative landing in the center of the parade ground. A powerful blast of air from the rotors raised a gigantic cloud of dust. All the cadets and instructors on the parade ground stopped what they were doing and stared at the helicopter in amazement. The helicopter's side door opened, a ramp lowered, and a figure emerged. In an immaculate field uniform, bearing the highest symbol of the Russian army, two brightly shining stars on the shoulder straps, was the commander of the main directorate of personnel of the ground forces, General Major Svetlana Orlova. She looked at the headquarters building through dark glasses. Her gaze was cold and piercing. Without a single escort, her presence alone silenced the entire academy. The face of Igor Denisov turned white as a sheet. He almost threw the phone down and ran out into the street like a madman. Comrade Commander General, I wish you good health. What brought him to this? Out of breath, Denisov saluted. Orlova, barely able to resist his greeting with her gaze, took off her glasses. Her eyes blazed with anger, but her voice was icy. Major General Denisov? Yes, sir, Major General Denisov. Gee, where is my daughter? This was not a mother's question. It was the stern reproach of a commander demanding an answer from a subordinate. Cadet Petrova is currently Maddie in Lewiscombe. I ask again, where is Cadet Anna Petrova now? Orlova's voice seemed to freeze the very air. Denisov realized that hiding anything was useless. In the psychological relief room, a military doctor was currently assessing her condition. Orlova interrupted him. Lead the way. She said nothing more and headed toward the building. Headquarters. Denisov, his face close to tears, followed her. All the soldiers they met in the corridor froze in place and saluted. Orlova paid no attention to anyone. Her goal was the one place where her daughter was locked up. They approached the cold iron door of the psychological decompression room. Orlova personally ordered the military police sentry to open the door. The policeman hastily opened the door with a key. Inside, in a cramped, dark room, a small, hunched figure sat on the cold floor, hugging her knees. Anna. Feeling movement, Anna slowly raised her head. When her empty eyes reflected the silhouette of her mother standing in the doorway, a huge wave of emotion washed over her. Mom. The name she tried so hard not to pronounce. The tears she had held back for so long gushed from her eyes. Orlova resolutely entered the room and squatted down in front of her daughter. Silently, with a trembling hand, she touched her swollen red cheeks. At that moment, all emotion vanished from Major General Orlova's eyes. Only steely anger remained. She stood quietly and turned to Denisov. Quote, "Summon Alpha Company Commander, Captain Marina Volkova, and Cadet Irina Sokolova here immediately." Her voice was quiet, but its weight was like thunder. Under the authority of the commander of the main personnel directorate, an icy investigation in search of the truth was beginning. The office of the head of the school now resembled a command post on the battlefield. The previous owner, Major General Igor Denisov, stood nervously against the wall, and his place was taken by the highest commander of the ground forces, Major General Svetlana Orlova. She did not sit in the chief's chair. Instead, she stood by the window, arms crossed, and looked out onto the parade ground. Her cold anger froze the air in the room. Anna, after administering first aid in the medical unit, returned and stood quietly next to her mother. The red swelling on her cheek had not gone down, but there were no more tears. After a while, there was a knock on the door and two people entered. One was the Alpha Company commander, Captain Marina Volkova, the other, Cadet Irina Sokolova, her leg in a cast, supported by a comrade. Entering the office, Marina Volkova saw Commander Orlova there and froze. Her perfect mask of imperturbability cracked for the first time. Even when the helicopter landed and the entire school was in an uproar, she tried to remain calm. But now, facing a living legend and the highest commander, she felt a chill of instinctive fear run down her spine. "Why is the commander here?" "Good health, Comrade Major General. Captain Volkova has arrived as ordered." Instinctively, she shouted a greeting at the loudest voice. Orlova slowly turned to face her. Her gaze was devoid of emotion, which made it even more eerie. "Sit down." Orlova nodded toward the sofa. Volkova and Sokolova sat down carefully. Orlova looked at Irina Sokolova first. Her icy gaze softened slightly. Quote, "Cadet Sokolova, how are you feeling?" "I'm fine, Comrade Major General. Tell me in detail what happened last night during the orientation exercise. I want to hear not what's written in a report, but what you saw and experienced with your own eyes." Irina Sokolova, swallowing nervously, glanced at Captain Volkova for a moment, and then, as if making a decision, began to speak. "Last night I tripped and slid down the slope. I felt a sharp pain in my ankle, and the squad leader, Cadet Petrova, immediately ran to me. After assessing my condition, she realized that the radio was working poorly and delay was dangerous, so she decided to carry me along the road. She ordered the rest of the squad to immediately return to headquarters and report the situation. Thanks to Cadet Petrova, I received prompt medical attention. A calm but clear testimony. Orlova nodded and turned her gaze to Captain Volkova. The temperature in the room seemed to drop a few more degrees. Captain Volkova, "Yes sir, Captain Volkova. Did you hear Cadet Sokolova's testimony?" "I did. However, your report to the commanding officer states that Cadet Petrova voluntarily left the training exercise and violated chain of command. Why did you submit a false report?" Volkova answered without the slightest hesitation, as if she had replayed this scenario in her mind many times. That Cadet Petrova saved a comrade is a fact, but that in the process she violated regulations and procedures is also an indisputable fact. The army is an organization where procedure and discipline are more important than results. As an instructor, I assessed the situation and reported based on principles. Principles, Orlova drawled. These principles are more important than the determination to save a comrade in distress. An instructor should teach cadets how to survive on the battlefield, not be a parrot repeating dead rules. My fault. But my decision to remain silent, one quiet word from Orlova, cut Volkova's speech short. Whether you were right or not, we'll figure it out later. Right now, I'm interested in something else. Orlova slowly approached Volkova. Standing close, she pointed a finger at Anna's swollen cheek. What's this? Volkova's pupils twitched slightly. Cadet Petrova insulted me as a superior and even humiliated me, hiding behind your name. Comrade Major General. To restore military discipline, I was forced to slap her in the face. Yes, sir. And what did Cadet Petrova say? She claimed to be your daughter. I took this as a clear insult to the superior and a sign of mental illness. Hearing this, Orlova smiled faintly. The smile was so cold and empty that it would have sent shivers down anyone's spine. And you thought it was a lie. Of course, how could anyone believe such nonsense? Then listen to me carefully, Captain Volkova. Orlova looked the captain straight in the eyes and said clearly, Cadet Anna Petrova, my daughter. All the blood drained from Marina Volkova's face. Her eyes widened with horror and disbelief. The perfect mask of imperturbability shattered, revealing pure fear. She looked from Orlova to Anna, it seemed. Now she saw that they were terrifyingly similar. She cursed herself for not noticing this obvious fact. And the words she called nonsense turned out to be the pure truth. And you slapped my daughter in the face for telling the truth and locked her in solitary confinement. Your military discipline is to trample the truth with violence, Comrade Major General. I really didn't know this misunderstanding. Volkova's voice trembled. All the pride and arrogance she'd built up all her life crumbled in an instant. Orlova didn't listen to her excuses. Major General Denisov. Yes, sir. Denisov, standing like a statue, jumped in surprise. Immediately suspend Captain Marina Volkova from her post. Instruct the main directorate of the military police to conduct an official investigation into allegations of abuse of office, hazing, false reporting, and negligence. Also, conduct a full review of all cases of hazing in Alpha Company over the past 3 months and ensure the protection of the affected cadets. That's my order. Yes, with Denisov's answer, Marina Volkova's fate was sealed. She staggered, almost falling on the spot. Her entire life, her entire impregnable fortress, had crumbled in an instant. Orlova no longer looked at her. She turned to her daughter. Anna, Anya, what do you want? You can reveal all this and leave here. No one will judge you. Anna shook her head. She walked past the defeated Volkova and stood before her mother. No, I will continue on my path. Today I understood the value of epaulets and the value of truth, and I understood why I must become a soldier. I will become not a person like Instructor Volkova, but a sergeant who can protect her comrades, like Irina Sokolova, who is ready to sacrifice herself for those in trouble. So, Mom, believe in me and come back. I am no longer Svetlana Orlova's daughter, but Cadet Anna Petrova. My battle has just begun. At that moment, a faint smile appeared in Svetlana Orlova's eyes for the first time. It was a smile of pride, relief, and boundless trust in her daughter. She nodded silently and tightly squeezed her daughter's shoulder. The helicopter soared into the sky again with a deafening roar. Anna Petrova stood alone on the parade ground and gazed for a long time at the sky where her mother had flown. The great storm had passed, but her world hadn't collapsed. On the contrary, her true life as a soldier began on a more solid foundation. After the Mevo, carrying Commander Svetlana Orlova, disappeared over the horizon. A strange silence and chaos reigned in the training center, as always happens after a hurricane. News of the unprecedented visit of the highest commander, the dismissal of Captain Volkova, and the opening of the investigation could not be concealed, despite the strictest order of silence. The fact that Kirsan Petrova was the commander's daughter, in particular, instantly spread throughout the school as rumors. Views of Anna changed overnight. Comrades who only yesterday had avoided her, considering her problematic or crazy, were now afraid to even speak to her. Some looked with awe, others with undisguised envy. But there were also positive moments. Other cadets, secretly suffering under the oppression of Captain Volkova, began to approach her cautiously. Quote, "Petrova, or rather, Anya, thank you," one of the girls spoke up first. "Thanks to you, we can now breathe a sigh of relief." When a commission from the main directorate of the military police arrived at the school and began a large-scale investigation, numerous instances of systematic bullying, hazing, and discrimination on Volkova's part were uncovered. The school's commander, Major General Denisov, also received a severe reprimand for negligence in supervising his subordinates. Anna was no longer alone. She became a symbol of courage, standing up against injustice, and a center for change. She approached comrades who had shunned her and silently helped those who were lagging behind in training. Seeing her sincerity, the cadets gradually began to see her not as the commander's daughter, but as their trusted comrade, Anna. Meanwhile, at the heart of the army in Moscow, in the office of the commander of the main directorate of personnel, unprecedented tension reigned. Major General Orlova had turned her daughter's personal incident into a problem for the entire Russian army. She convened key ground forces leaders, the chief of the main directorate of military police, the chief of the main directorate of combat training, and other generals. What happened at the Ryazan training center wasn't just the misdeed of one officer, but a predictable catastrophe born of our army's ailing system. Orlova's voice echoed throughout the conference room. A cult of results at any cost, treating subordinates as expendable material rather than individuals. An authoritarian leadership style, a closed corporate culture where problems are hidden until the abscess bursts. This is the true face of our army today. She brought up an anonymous case describing the actions of Captain Volkova, without mentioning Anna's name. "This cadet could not have been my child. It could have been your son, or an ordinary young man from Russia. What parents would entrust their children to an army where such things happen?" She firmly presented a reform plan entitled, "An Innovative Program for Improving the Service Culture to Create a Modern and Strong Army." First, strengthening the accountability of commanders. In the event of hazing within a unit, a commander of any rank bears full responsibility without any leniency. Second, implementing the red whistle system, creating an anonymous reporting system allowing service members to report violations directly to the main directorate of the military police without revealing their identity. Third, introducing a comprehensive leadership assessment, with assessments not only from superiors but also from colleagues and subordinates, will become a key factor in promotions and appointments. Fourth, a mandatory mentoring program for female service members to eradicate closed, vicious practices and the transmission of hazing within female units. When the plan was announced, a ripple of excitement ran through the gray-haired generals and men. One of them cautiously remarked, "Comrade Commander, we share your goals, but the plan is too radical. It could lead to commanders being afraid to take the initiative and starting to protect themselves. This could weaken the Army's combat effectiveness." "What is combat effectiveness?" Orlova retorted. "It consists only of guns and tanks. How can an army be strong where soldiers distrust each other and fear a stab in the back?" True combat effectiveness is born of mutual trust. Silence fell in the room, but resistance was in the air, hints that she was acting too authoritarian, reacting emotionally to the incident with her daughter. At that moment, the door opened, and an employee from the presidential administration entered, with a message from the president for Major General Orlova. He handed her a short note. Orlova read it and glanced at all the generals. The president fully supports the reform plan I have presented and orders its immediate implementation. He also emphasized that this reform should become the standard not only for the ground forces, but for the entire armed forces. These words completely changed the atmosphere in the room. This was no longer the will of a single commander, but a direct order from the Supreme Commander-in-Chief. No one dared object anymore. The inflexible generals lowered their heads. The enormous gears of reform were irreversibly set in motion. A few weeks later, a graduation ceremony was held at the Ryazan Training Center. The cadets, who had undergone hellish training, finally received their shiny sergeant's shoulder straps. "I serve Russia." The large screen showed Sergeant Anna Petrova, confidently saluting. Her face was devoid of any trace of the past. It was the face of a true soldier, hardened by trials. In the parental section, Major General Svetlana Orlova sat modestly, not as a commander, but as an ordinary mother. She tried not to attract the attention of the other commanders on the podium, looking proudly at her daughter. After the ceremony, Anna found her mother among the families taking photos with the graduates. "Mom, have you arrived?" "Of course. It's the day my daughter becomes a sergeant in the Russian army." Quote. Orlova pulled a small box from her pocket. It contained a badge commemorating her graduation from the training center. She pinned it to her daughter's chest herself. "I'm proud of you, Sergeant Petrova." "Thank you, Comrade General, Major," Anna replied playfully. A warm smile appeared on Orlova's face. Before her stood no longer a fragile girl, but a strong sergeant of the Russian armed forces, who had forged her own path. Anna's battle was over, but the battle she had started was only raging throughout the army, and she herself was the main proof and hope for this change. Several months had passed since graduation. The sergeant's shoulder straps on Anna Petrova had already become familiar. Her first duty station was the North Caucasus. She served in a separate Guards motorized rifle brigade, stationed in a region where icy winds and constant tension were the norm. She was assigned as a squad leader in a reconnaissance battalion on the very front lines. The responsibility weighed heavily on her shoulders, but Anna silently accepted it all. After all, this was the path she had chosen. However, in her new unit, a different kind of obstacle awaited her. Senior Warrant Officer Pavel Morozov, the de facto king of the NCO Corps and the company's depot manager, was a man of the old school. Having served on the front lines for over 15 years, he constantly insisted that the current army was less an army than a children's camp. He especially ridiculed the reform program handed down from Moscow. Morozov disliked Anna from the very first day. "Hey, Sergeant, I heard you were a celebrity back in training. They say she's the commander's daughter, right?" he asked point blank when she reported. "Yes, sir." Well, the woman was lucky to get into reconnaissance, and even a squad leader right away. Good times have arrived. And he didn't hide his sarcasm. "I was appointed according to established procedure." "Procedure? Yes. Procedure is important." Morozov stood up and patted Anna on the shoulder. "Sergeant, this isn't a cozy classroom. This is the front line. Leadership by patting people on the head and having a chat doesn't work here. If you don't want to lose your epaulets because some brat whistles at you for a few strong words, just sit quietly and do as you're told. Understood?" Quote. It was a clear threat and a warning. The squad Anna was assigned to was typically problematic. From the demobilized soldier who couldn't care less to the new recruit who was constantly bullied by his superiors, Anna decided to do things her own way. In the evenings, she held individual conversations with each soldier, listening to their problems. If someone hurt themselves during training, she didn't humiliate them in front of but took them aside and calmly explained what needed to be done. She especially protected the new recruit. In Morozov's eyes, all this was just a woman's snot. The incident occurred during a night patrol. One of the soldiers in Anna's squad, Private Kimov, dozed off at his post, and Morozov caught him. The next morning, Morozov grabbed Kimov by the lapels in front of the entire company and yelled, "You're a soldier, you bastard, and if the enemy had broken through while you were dozing off here, and because of one guy like you, the entire company could have perished." Quote, he threw Kimov to the ground and barked at Anna's entire squad. Third squad. Assume the prone position. For not keeping an eye on your comrade, I'll shake the soul out of you today. When the soldiers began to slowly descend, a voice rang out, "Stop." Anna stood in front of Morozov. "Comrade Senior Warrant Officer, Private Kimov, is guilty, that's a fact, but the punishment must be in accordance with the regulations. Insulting a person and violence against a soldier is a direct violation of the regulations." Morozov's face turned purple. Some girl sergeant dared to contradict him in front of the whole company. "What, Petrov's regulations, are you out of your mind? Who are you defending now?" "I am defending the regulations. As a squad commander, I will officially report the punishment of Private Kimov to the company commander, and he will receive a disciplinary sanction in the form of out-of-turn duty or loss of leave. Such violence is unacceptable." "Yes, Morozov," he was already raising his fist, but then the company commander ran up. After this incident, Morozov began to openly ignore Anna, spreading rumors that she was asking for trouble, hiding behind the general's mother and giving her squad the dirtiest and hard work. He wanted to prove to everyone how helpless and unrealistic her leadership was. Anna found herself isolated again, but this time, everything was different. Behind her stood soldiers who believed in her and followed her. Private Kimov, whom she protected, became one of the best in training, and the rest of the soldiers were imbued with the belief, "Our commander will protect us." The third squad became a much more cohesive team. And finally, the day came when Anna's leadership was truly tested. It was at dawn, in thick fog. Anna's squad was carrying out a routine reconnaissance along the border. The lead lookout suddenly froze and gave an emergency signal. From a certain area, someone was approaching. Several shadows were visible in the fog. These were not wild animals, but rhythmic movement, the sound of metal. "Everyone take cover, I report." Anna immediately radioed the command post. Her heart was pounding. This was a real combat situation, which she knew only from books and teachings. The lives of her soldiers depended on her decision. Morozov's sarcastic voice rang in her ears like a hallucination. "You'll coddle them, but when it comes down to it, they'll all die." Anna clenched her teeth and looked at the faces of her soldiers. There was fear in their eyes, but along with it, absolute trust in their commander. In a quiet but firm voice, she gave the first order, "Listen only to me. We will all return alive." In the thick fog on the front lines, an invisible war began between the new leader, Sergeant Anna Petrova, and the symbol of the old era, Senior Warrant Officer Pavel Morozov. "Listen only to me. We will all return alive." From this quiet but steely order from Sergeant Anna Petrova, the looks of the soldiers of the third squad, gripped by extreme tension, changed. They instinctively understood that their lives were in the hands of this 20-year-old the female commander. The shadows in the fog were approaching. 4 armed with machine guns, carrying backpacks, undoubtedly militants or intruders. But their behavior was strange. They didn't look like an enemy carrying out sabotage. 2 were supporting the third, who was obviously wounded and limping. The 4th was walking ahead, but seemed completely lost in the thick fog. They hadn't yet noticed Anna's group. "Commander, we'll fire," the sergeant whispered nearby, taking the safety off his machine gun. According to the rules of engagement, an armed enemy who crossed the border was subject to destruction without warning, but Anna shook her head. "Do not open fire, wait." "But, Commander," I said, "wait." Quote. Anna picked up the radio and reported to the command post in as calm a voice as possible. "Sokol, this is Zarya. Reporting the situation. Visual contact with 4 armed individuals. Currently, at a distance of 70 meters, one is presumably seriously wounded." Quote. "They don't seem to be showing any signs of aggression. They're lost and heading in the opposite direction. Requesting instructions." A few seconds later, a voice full of fury burst from the radio. It was Senior Warrant Officer Morozov, who was listening to their clarity. "Petrova, are you kidding me? What kind of analysis is this when the enemy is in front of you? You've forgotten the rules. Take them out immediately. What are you waiting for?" Quote. His shout was followed by the company commander's hesitant voice. "Sergeant Petrova, Warrant Officer Morozov is right. Follow the regulations." Quote. 1,000 thoughts raced through Anna's head. What would happen if she pulled the trigger? She could become a hero for following orders. But these people clearly weren't going to fight. A firefight in this fog could escalate into a full-scale battle. Would it be for the good of the country? She had made her decision. This wasn't disobeying an order. In an attempt to avoid an unnecessary clash and fully control the situation, Anna clearly communicated her decision so that both the command post and Morozov could hear her. The enemy hadn't spotted us and was clearly demoralized. Their destruction in this situation would be by firing squad, not combat. If they spot us and show aggression, we will immediately open fire to kill. But right now, I believe provoking them would invite grave disaster. I'm taking charge of the situation. We will maintain surveillance and direct their withdrawal to our territory. Petrova, are you crazy? Before Morozov could finish shouting, Anna released the transmission button. She gave the soldiers a quiet hand signal. Do not open fire. Withdraw 20 meters back, silently maintaining battle formation for observation. The soldiers hesitated, but no one disobeyed their commander's order. They quietly retreated, disappearing into the fog. They were no longer hunters, but ghosts. Anna's group silently followed the intruders, their invisible presence nudging them north in the right direction for 10 minutes, 20 minutes. Time dragged on agonizingly. Finally, the intruders staggered across the border and disappeared into the fog. End of contact. The enemy has left our territory. No casualties. When Anna calmly reported the end, the soldiers collapsed to the ground, breathing a sigh of relief. They had just saved each other's lives without firing a single shot. Immediately upon returning to the unit, Anna was summoned to the battalion commander's office. The battalion commander, the company commander, and warrant officer Morozov, crimson with rage, were already waiting for her. Sergeant Petrova, he yelled the moment she entered. You're not a soldier, you're a coward who couldn't pull the trigger when she saw the enemy, and if they had attacked us first, that would have been a direct violation of orders and treason. Quote, the battalion commander also looked at Anna with bewilderment. Although everything ended well, her actions were a clear violation of the rules of engagement. Anna stood silently, her back straight. At that moment, the direct line phone on the battalion commander's desk rang. He tensely picked up the body. Yes, sir, understood. Yes, sir, quote. After hanging up, the battalion commander looked at Morozov and Anna, and then, after a long pause, said, Division headquarters just called. According to intelligence, an explosion occurred at dawn today in adjacent territory. Presumably, an old mine detonated during their patrol route. As a result, their patrol group, carrying a wounded man, became lost in poor visibility and briefly crossed the border. Had we opened fire first in that situation, it could have provoked a local conflict with unpredictable consequences. Sergeant Petrova's calm and measured actions, which prevented unnecessary escalation, were praised at headquarters as exemplary. The air in the room froze. Pavel Morozov froze in place, looking as if he'd been hit over the head with a hammer. his faith, his experience, his old guard. All of it shattered by a 20-year-old sergeant. If they'd acted by his rules, their battalion might now be paying for the terrible consequences of the battle. The battalion commander approached Anna and placed his hand on her shoulder. "Sergeant Petrova, you've done an outstanding job. You've saved the honor of our entire battalion." When Anna returned to the barracks, her soldiers approached her. "Commander, you were magnificent today. Thank you, Commander, for saving us." There were no longer any doubts or prejudices in their eyes. Only respect and absolute trust in the commander with whom they'd shared mortal danger. Anna finally smiled faintly. That evening, Pavel Morozov approached her for the first time. He hesitated for a long time, and then awkwardly saluted her. "Sergeant, I was wrong. Forgive me," was the best apology he could muster. Anna nodded silently in response. This wasn't a personal victory. It was a small but powerful turning point, when a new era triumphed over the old. She was no longer the commander's daughter. She was a commander who had found the right path in the darkness, a soldier who had won a battle without firing a shot, a leader for whom the lives of her subordinates were more precious than her own. She had finally begun to shine with her own name, Sergeant Anna Petrova. The brightest star in the very depths of the Russian army. Her true service was just beginning.